look ahead to tonight's 2020 on the murder of top fashion designer Gianni Versace outside his Miami home.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 50 awful crimes that occurred throughout the world in the 1990s.
And the lead story is the FBI is investigating Tonya Harding's husband in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan. Oh my God.
Pablo Escobar escapes.
Presidente, acabo de hablar con el fiscal general. Me estaba contando que la esposa de Moncada fue a reportarle la desaparición de su marido en la catedral.
By the early 1990s, Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar's reign of terror was unraveling. As head of the Medellin cartel, he built a multi-billion-dollar cocaine empire, flooding the American market with drugs and orchestrating assassinations, bombings, and kidnappings. Escobar's ruthless tactics brought Colombia to its knees, with judges, politicians, and police among his victims. In 1991, he surrendered to authorities but manipulated the system to his advantage, living in a self-designed prison/personal mansion called La Catedral. He escaped just 1 year later, sparking a nationwide manhunt. He remained free for over a year until he was finally tracked down and killed in December of 1993. His death marked the end of a bloody era, but his legend still looms large.
For years I've been building this son of a bitch up in my head. What a monster he'd be. But here's the thing. When you lay eyes on him, the devil's a real letdown.
The Sister Abea murder case.
27th March 1992, same day, Father Couture overpowers Sister Abea, covers her mouth as she tries to scream. Sister Sefi takes a hand axe and hits Abea on the head with it, and she lies there motionless on the ground.
On March 27, 1992, Sister Abea from Kerala, India was found dead in the well of the St. Pius X convent. Unfortunately, investigations were plagued by tampering, cover-ups, and years of frustrating delays, turning the case into one of India's most infamous mysteries. Regardless, activists pushed for justice, arguing that powerful religious figures were being protected. The Central Bureau of Investigation worked the case further and revealed that Sister Abea had walked in on 2 priests and a nun in a compromising situation. She was then killed to ensure her silence. In 2020, nearly 3 decades after her murder, convictions were finally secured, closing a mystery that had long shook the Catholic Church system in India.
28-year wait for justice has ended for Kerala's Sister Abea. A special CBI court has sentenced a Catholic priest and a nun to life in prison for murdering Sister Abea back in 1992.
Marc Dutroux.
Some of them starved to death, others were buried alive. These are some of the most horrendous crimes that any criminologist will ever come across.
Belgian serial killer Marc Dutroux horrified Europe in the mid-1990s when his crimes were finally exposed. In 1996, police discovered that he had kidnapped at least 6 girls and kept them imprisoned in a makeshift dungeon hidden beneath his Marcinelle home. 4 of these 6 ultimately died, either by starving to death or being outright murdered. As if that wasn't bad enough, the case sparked further outrage when it was revealed that police had repeatedly overlooked some obvious leads that could have saved multiple lives. Public confidence in Belgium's justice system completely collapsed, culminating in a mass protest on October 20th, 1996, known as the White March. Dutroux's case remains one of Europe's darkest failures in protecting vulnerable children.
2 days after his arrest, Dutroux confessed and took the police to the basement where Sabine and Letitia were found alive.
Suzanne Jovin.
In December 1998, Yale student Suzanne Jovin was brutally stabbed and killed, and ever since, New Haven police have been looking for her killer.
Yale student Suzanne Jovin was brutally murdered near campus in New Haven, Connecticut on December 4th, 1998. The 21-year-old senior was found stabbed a gruesome 17 times after leaving a university event, and her killing shocked the Ivy League community and drew intense media attention. Investigators initially focused on a Yale lecturer who supervised Jovin's thesis, but no physical evidence ever tied him to the crime. The lack of progress frustrated both her family and the public, turning the unsolved case into one of the decade's most haunting mysteries. The identity of Jovin's killer remains officially and frustratingly unresolved, leaving her case an enduring enigma in American true crime.
In 1998, Jovin was found stabbed in New Haven's East Rock neighborhood. She was last seen leaving the Yale campus about 30 minutes before. No one was ever arrested in that case.
Tracy Andrews.
He was stabbed in the throat, back, front, repeatedly, viciously, and continuously.
In December of 1996, English woman Tracy Andrews tearfully told the press how her fiancé, Lee Harvey, had been killed in a brutal road rage attack. Her story described a violent confrontation with another driver, and it quickly captured the nation's attention. But as investigators dug deeper, suspicious cracks in her tale soon emerged, and forensic evidence pointed back to Andrews herself. It was soon revealed that Andrews had stabbed Harvey more than 40 times, then staged the scene as an act of unbridled road rage committed by a stranger. Her elaborate performance of grief backfired, and in 1997, she was convicted of murder. She served 14 years in prison and was released in 2011, going on to change her name and even marry.
I think it is absolutely possible for Tracy Andrews to live a normal life. I think if she's come to terms with her offence, if she's addressed those underlying behavioural traits and characteristics, if she's prepared to just keep her head down and get on with her life, then yes, very much she can do that.
Darlie Routtier.
911, what is your emergency? Ma'am? They just stabbed me and my children.
On the morning of June 6, 1996, a 911 call from Darlie Routtier shocked the state of Texas. She claimed that an intruder had broken into her home and stabbed both her and her two young sons, Devin and Damon. Unfortunately, her sons did not survive. However, suspicion quickly turned on Routtier when the crime scene failed to support her story. Investigators uncovered a number of inconsistencies, including staged evidence and Routier's unusual behavior during police questioning, and she was charged with her son's murders. Prosecutors laid into Routtier, and their story was enough to convince the jury. She was convicted and sentenced to death, though supporters, including her ex-husband, still insist that she's innocent.
Oh, God. I miss them so much.
The Happy Face murders.
What about Lori Ann Pentland?
Yes, I did kill her, yeah. Her attitude was like her life was all hell and she didn't want to be around and she wanted me to feel sorry for her and I just, well, you know, I could kill you and put you out of your misery, and she said go for it, so I did.
The 1990s saw the rise of serial killer Keith Hunter Jesperson, perhaps better known as the Happy Face Killer. A Canadian truck driver, Jesperson roamed the U.S., preying on vulnerable women he encountered during his long-haul routes. He ultimately murdered at least 8 women between 1990 and 1995, often leaving their bodies in ditches near highways. Frustrated when others were wrongfully getting blamed for his crimes, Jesperson began sending anonymous confessions to the media and authorities, always signing them with his signature smiley face, hence his nickname. His cold, matter-of-fact letters revealed his compulsion for recognition, and he eventually got it. Arrested in 1995, Jesperson was convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
So back on the road, in a rest stop bathroom, he scribbles on the wall. January 21, 1990. Killed Tanya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame, so I can kill again. And he did.
The Dunblane Massacre.
Dunblane was a tragedy for everyone who was involved. Some people in the media called it an incident, which was hardly appropriate.
Tragedy struck Scotland on March 13, 1996, when Thomas Hamilton entered Dunblane Primary School armed with a number of handguns. In just minutes, he killed 17 people and injured a further 15 before taking his own life. The massacre remains the deadliest mass shooting in British history, transcending the small town and devastating the nation at large. It also had enormous repercussions. The horror of the shooting sparked a huge legal movement that led to some of the world's strictest gun control laws, effectively banning private handgun ownership in Great Britain. Dunblane's unbelievable grief transformed into sweeping policy change, reshaping the very structure of the island forever.
It's part of UK history now, unfortunately, as well, and it's something that needs to be remembered. And so that everyone's aware that we are still here, we are still getting on with our lives, and we didn't just fade into the background either. We still had to power on and push on with our lives, and it's important that everybody knows we're doing it and doing it well.
The disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley.
The mystery is being fueled by reported sightings of Amy years after she disappeared. She has supposedly been seen in Curacao and in Barbados, giving rise to speculation that she may have been kidnapped by a ring of human traffickers.
Cruise ships are a huge source of disappearance stories, and Amy Lynn Bradley's is one of the most famous. The 23-year-old vanished from a cruise ship in March 1998 while it was stationed near Curacao. Bradley's father saw her sleeping on the balcony around 5:30 a.m., but when he checked again at 6, she was gone. Despite exhaustive searches of the ship and surrounding waters, no trace of the missing woman was ever found. Over the years, multiple witnesses reported seeing Bradley in the Caribbean, with some suggesting that she had been trafficked. A photograph resembling her even surfaced in a later investigation, further intensifying speculation. To this day, Bradley's unknown fate remains one of the most chilling mysteries of the 90s.
Yes, we received some photographs of a lady called Jazz, and after having forensic studies done of these pictures, it has been determined by individuals in the forensic arena that these are actually Amy.
Pamela Smart.
Before Jody, before Casey, before OJ and the Menendez brothers, there was Pam.
23-year-old high school media coordinator Pamela Smart became the center of one of America's most sensational trials in March of 1991. She was accused of seducing a 15-year-old student named William Flynn and persuading him to murder her husband, Greg Smart. The plan went off, with Flynn shooting and murdering Greg in the couple's home. Unfortunately for the scheming duo, the police investigation quickly pinned them as suspects, and the whole scheme unraveled. The trial was heavily covered by the media, thanks in large part to the captivating blend of salacious personal detail and thrilling courtroom drama. Smart was ultimately convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and sentenced to life without parole. Flynn served over 20 years in prison, but was paroled in 2015.
Mr. Flynn seems sincere that he wants to succeed in the community, and I guess the parole board's belief is that he will succeed.
Lyons says these transitions can be difficult, but the parole board wouldn't have granted Flynn his freedom if they didn't think he was prepared.
Susan Smith.
I am a Christian, and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me.
In October 1994, Susan Smith of South Carolina made national headlines when she reported that a black man had carjacked her vehicle with her 2 young sons inside. A nationwide search for the mystery man followed, and Smith appeared on television tearfully begging for the safe return of her children. But just 9 days later, her story collapsed and a new horror emerged. Investigators discovered that she had strapped her children to their car seats and had intentionally rolled the vehicle into a lake. Smith confessed in the face of overwhelming evidence, claiming that depression and a failed relationship drove her horrific actions. Needless to say, sympathy evaporated and turned to hatred, and Smith was sentenced to life in prison.
I'll give anything if I can go back and change it. And I love Michael and Alice with all my heart.
The Gainesville Ripper.
His capacity for violence and his appetite for violence was more than anyone I had ever encountered.
The small college town of Gainesville, Florida was gripped by terror in the summer of 1990 as 5 students were found murdered in their apartments. The killer broke in, brutally attacked the inhabitants, and then posed their bodies in various disturbing ways. The murder sparked a campus lockdown, with thousands throughout the town living in abject fear. A man named Danny Rolling was later arrested in an unrelated robbery, and his DNA linked him to the Gainesville crimes. Rolling later confessed not only to the Gainesville murders, but also to 3 further killings in Louisiana. Rolling's story influenced Kevin Williamson to write Scream, and he was ultimately executed in 2006.
When I looked into his eyes, it was vacant. There was just darkness. And I'd never seen that before with anybody, and I've never seen it with anybody since. And Danny Rolling is, in my opinion, the most evil person I've ever met.
The Long Island Railroad shooting.
Guy just went berserk. His body's all over. Guys were shot in the head. The shots just kept going off. He wouldn't stop shooting. He just wouldn't stop shooting.
Commuters on a Long Island Railroad train were caught in a nightmare on the evening of December 7th, 1993. A man named Colin Ferguson opened fire on unsuspecting passengers during rush hour, killing 6 and wounding 19 others. Further tragedy may have occurred, but Ferguson was wrestled to the ground by passengers when he paused to reload. The shooting shocked New York City and the nation at large. His trial was equally infamous. Rejecting lawyers, he insisted on representing himself, often delivering bizarre and paranoid statements and even questioning the validity of his own victims in court. Unsurprisingly, he was found guilty and received multiple life sentences. He is currently eligible for parole in 2309.
I wouldn't want to be in his shoes because 315 years is small to eternity.
Jack Unterweger.
The Austrians wanted to prosecute Unterweger in their court for all 11 murders. But they knew that would be difficult. The Austrian public perceived Jack as a celebrity.
Austrian writer and convicted serial killer Jack Unterweger became notorious in the 1990s for leading a double life. Unterweger was jailed for murdering a woman back in 1974, but he was released in 1990 after seemingly reinventing himself as a celebrated author and journalist. His writings, supposedly about rehabilitation, convinced intellectuals and artists that he had been reformed, and he was released. But soon after, sex workers across Europe and the United States began turning up dead. Turns out the newly released Unterweger was not rehabilitated, and he had strangled at least 11 women with their own bras. He was convicted of murder in 1994, but he took his own life before he could serve his sentence.
More psychopathic offenders like Jack do it to exert control, and it's the last great defiant act that he exercised to wrest control of this situation away from the government, away from the authorities. He would not allow himself to be imprisoned for the rest of his life.
Louise Woodward.
Louise's father worked for the Liverpool Echo in the print room. They were, an ordinary couple with 2 daughters. Before they knew it, they were suddenly thrust into the world spotlight.
In February of 1997, British au pair Louise Woodward was charged with the murder of 8-month-old Matthew Eapen while working for a Massachusetts family. The baby had died from a fractured skull and brain injuries, and it was also found that he had an unnoticed broken wrist. Prosecutors argued that Woodward had violently shaken him to death, while the defense claimed that the injuries may have occurred previously. The jury sided with the prosecution and convicted Woodward of second-degree murder, but the judge controversially reduced the conviction to involuntary manslaughter, enraging many. She was sentenced to time served and released. The case fiercely divided public opinion. Some viewed her as a scapegoat, others as a cold-blooded murderer.
It was stunning. It was beyond anything that people thought was a possibility. The judge released her with time served, 279 days.
Megan Kanka.
When Maureen and Rich Kanka learned the man who murdered Megan was a convicted sex offender who had served prison time, they said they had to do something.
Today, registered sex offenders must disclose their address. That wasn't the case in 1994, when 7-year-old Megan Kanka was lured into her neighbor's house in New Jersey and murdered. The perpetrator was one Jesse Temendekwas, a convicted sex offender. The crime shocked the country, especially when it was revealed that Temendekwas had prior offenses against children but still lived anonymously in a residential neighborhood. Public outrage led to the swift creation of Megan's Law, which mandated community notification of registered sex offenders. It is still in effect to this day. Megan's death was unbearably tragic, but it also became a catalyst for sweeping legal reforms across the United States.
I promised my baby today that until my dying death, we would get the legislation so that this will never, ever happen to anybody's child again.
Polly Klaas.
Halloween is around the corner, and the girls have been trying on different costumes in preparation for the upcoming holiday. Within seconds, their lives will change forever.
If there's one place that should be considered safe, it's your own house. But on October 1st, 1993, 12-year-old Polly Klaas was kidnapped from her California home while she was having a slumber party with friends. Armed intruder Richard Allen Davis tied up the girls and abducted Klaas, sparking a massive nationwide search. Celebrities and politicians joined in, and her case dominated media coverage for weeks on end. Tragically, Polly's body was eventually found in a shallow grave. Davis, a repeat offender, was convicted of her murder and sentenced to death. Like Megan's Law, the case led to sweeping reforms and fueled the passage of California's 3 strikes sentencing policy, which states that 3 serious convictions will result in a mandatory life sentence.
Missing persons bulletins are now sent out over all police channels. At routine pullovers and traffic stops, officers can access not only driving histories, but criminal records as well. Implementation of the 3 strikes you're out legislation was a direct result of the case.
The Luby's shooting.
All you hear is gunshots, not 1 or 2, it's like random shooting. People went to screaming and crying and running everywhere.
George Hennard drove his truck into a Luby's cafeteria in Killeen, Texas on October 16, 1991, and promptly opened fire on the unsuspecting diners, killing 23 and injuring a further 27. Hennard then engaged in a brief shootout with the police before turning the gun on himself, denying everyone a sense of justice. At the time, the Luby's incident was the deadliest mass shooting in American history, and that macabre record stood until 2007, when it was surpassed by the Virginia Tech shooting. No one knows exactly what prompted Hennard to commit the atrocity, although many suspect that it was rooted in misogyny, as Hennard reportedly hated women, shouted sexist remarks, and primarily targeted women during the shooting.
He came out the window with a 9mm and he shot the cashier. And that's when I realized.
Amber Hagerman.
Jimmy Keble was in his backyard when he heard her scream.
When a black pickup pulled up next to her.
And he run up behind her and grabbed her. He turned around and come right back to here where his truck was, where the door was open, and put her in the truck.
Everyone knows that feeling of looking down at their vibrating phones and seeing a new Amber Alert. On January 13, 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was abducted while riding her bike in Arlington, Texas. Witnesses saw a man forcing her into a pickup truck, sparking a frantic search of the nearby area. But just 4 days later, the search ended in tragedy when Amber's body was found in a creek. Her killer has never been identified, but her case inspired one of the most important child protection tools of the modern era. Named after the late Hagerman, the Amber Alert program uses broadcasts and technology to rapidly alert the public of a nearby child abduction and hopefully save their lives.
The Amber Alert, I'm very, very proud of it because it is help saving our children's lives. It's helped bringing our children back to mommy and daddy.
The Tokyo Sarin attack.
By the time of the Tokyo subway attack in 1995, the cult had 10,000 followers in Japan and some 30,000 in Russia.
One of the worst crimes in Japanese history occurred on March 20th, 1995, when the Aum Shinrikyo cult released sarin gas on multiple subway lines during rush hour in Tokyo. Cult members punctured plastic bags filled with the deadly nerve agent, unleashing toxic fumes into crowded train cars and poisoning thousands. The attack killed 13 people and injured over 5,000. Completely overwhelming local hospitals with victims suffering from blindness, seizures, and respiratory distress. The cult, led by a man named Shoko Asahara, believed the world was nearing apocalypse and sought to trigger chaos. The attack remains one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism in Japan's history and sparked global concerns about both chemical weapons and cult extremism.
Asahara predicted that Armageddon would occur in the 1990s and told his followers that they would create a new world.
The North Hollywood shootout.
He saw a police car in the intersection at Laurel Canyon and Archwood. It was Sergeant Dean Haynes and a few civilians.
February 28, 1997. Gunfire erupts across the streets of Los Angeles, sending people fleeing into homes, cars, anywhere protected they can find. It's not the famous scene from Heat, it's the North Hollywood shootout, when bank robbers Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Mataseranu fled a Bank of America and engaged in battle with the responding police officers. The two had the weaponry of a small army and were even outfitted in homemade body armor, making incapacitation virtually impossible. But the police and SWAT found a way, with some even going to a local gun shop to purchase high-powered rifles. After 45 minutes of shooting, both robbers were killed. 20 people were injured, and nearly 2,000 rounds of ammo littered the streets of LA. The killing of James Byrd Jr.
We learned that there was a great deal of prejudice in our community that we kind of swept under the rug.
Referred to by many as a modern-day lynching, the murder of James Byrd Jr. shocked the nation in the summer of 1998. Byrd, a black accounting executive, accepted a ride from 3 white men in a pickup truck: John King, Lawrence Brewer, and Sean Berry. The 3 men took Byrd to a remote area, assaulted him, and chained him to the truck. They then dragged Byrd for 3 miles, resulting in his horrific death. Aside from nationwide outrage, the crime resulted in the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which was put into law by Barack Obama in 2009. Berry was sentenced to life in prison for murdering Byrd, and both King and Brewer were executed by the state of Texas.
All 3 were convicted. One received life in prison, Sean Berry, but the other 2 received death sentences. And Russell Brewer has already been executed, but tonight the convicted ringleader, John William King, is set to die by lethal injection.
Mary Kay Letourneau.
Even now, some 2 decades later, you can't help but ask, what was she thinking?
By the mid-1990s, Mary Kay Letourneau was teaching at Washington's Shorewood Elementary School. It's here that she met a Samoan student named Vili Fulau. Letourneau was drawn to Fulau, taking a particular interest in the child's artistic abilities. Before long, he was going over to Letourneau's house to study, and the two began a relationship. However, it was around this time that Letourneau's husband found love letters written to Fulau, and the police were contacted, resulting in Letourneau's arrest. She spent 6 years in prison, but she went on to marry Foulao after her release, and the two stayed together until 2019. Letourneau died of cancer the following year and left much of her estate to her ex-partner and ex-student.
So I ended up taking the bet and pursued Mary.
Isn't it incredible? It's just incredible to think that what started as a bit of showing off and following through on a dare or a bet has led to, you know, where we are now.
The Port Arthur massacre.
Good evening. A siege is underway in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur, where at least 25 people have been shot dead in Australia's worst massacre.
Martin Bryant snapped on the morning of April 28, 1996. Some years earlier, Bryant's father attempted to purchase a bed and breakfast called Seascape in Port Arthur, Tasmania, but he was beaten to the deal by couple David and Sally Martin. Around noon on April 28th, Bryant murdered both of the Martins at Seascape and proceeded to embark on an enormous massacre across the greater Port Arthur site. Equipped with 2 semi-automatic rifles, Bryant shot over 50 people, killing 35 of them and leaving the rest horribly injured. Following a standoff with the police that lasted over 18 hours, Bryant was arrested and given 35 life sentences, one for each victim.
The man believed responsible for Australia's worst mass murder this century is sedated and under police guard in a hospital. Police say they expect to talk to him later this morning when charges can be laid.
The murder of Brandon Teena.
Do you think that you will be executed?
Well, there was a time I'd say no, but, you know, I mean, I don't know.
You may know the story of Brandon Teena from the 1999 film Boys Don't Cry, for which Hilary Swank won the Academy Award. Teena was a transgender man in 1990s Nebraska, and he faced hostility from some members of his conservative community. He earned the particular ire of ex-convicts John Lauder and Tom Neeson. On the morning of December 31st, 1993, Lauder and Neeson broke into the home of Lisa Lambert, with whom Teena had been staying. Here, they murdered Teena, Lambert, and a mutual friend, Philip Devine. The case attracted widespread outrage and underscored the lack of legal protections for transgender individuals at the time, which in turn helped lead to legal and cultural reform.
When 48th Street opens in full, thousands of people will see this mural every single day. It's the first of its kind honoring Brandon Teena, and it's loud and proud at a time when trans issues are increasingly in the national and state spotlight.
Gary Ray Bowles.
Sad to say, but it's not hard to kill somebody. You can kill somebody pretty easy if you have the mindset for it.
Perhaps better known as the I-95 killer, Gary Ray Bowles was active throughout much of 1994. His first known murder occurred on March 15th, when he strangled a man named John Roberts in Daytona Beach. Over the next 8 months, Bowles would travel the country selling his body, strangling the men who picked him up, and stealing their credit cards. By the end of November, he had murdered at least 6 people, and had even found himself on the FBI's most wanted list. In court, it was ruled that Bowles was motivated by a need for money and homophobia, reportedly hating gay men and wishing for them to die. He was sentenced to death and executed on August 22, 2019.
Scheduled today at 6 p.m. in accordance with Florida law, the department will carry out the sentence of the court in the state of Florida versus Gary Ray Bowles.
The City Bonds robbery.
Is it your first time being around? You're doing great. Just smile, Loretta, so you don't look like you're being held up.
One of the largest bank robberies in history occurred on May 2, 1990. But this wasn't just a simple bank robbery. Instead, it was an enormous undertaking orchestrated by the combined efforts of the IRA, Colombian drug lords, and the New York Mafia. A courier named John Goddard was mugged at knife point in London's Nicholas Lane while carrying 301 certificates of deposit and various treasury bills. The stolen bonds were laundered through various criminal channels and totaled an astounding £292 million, about £850 million today. However, the heist turned out to be a monumental failure. All but 2 of the certificates were recovered, countless criminals were arrested, and some were even murdered, including Patrick Thomas, the man who carried out the mugging.
You sit there with a mass murderer. A mass murderer. Your heart rate is jacked. Your hand? Steady.
Thurston.
Stacey Compton knows just how real it was.
Lying on the floor, there's blood all over the floor, everything. It was like a pool of blood. I was standing in it.
The late 1990s saw a spat of school shootings, including Thurston in 1998. Perpetrator Kipland Kinkle was losing his grip on reality, hearing voices and developing an obsession with death. He later admitted to keeping a handgun in his locker, resulting in an immediate suspension. Following a lecture by his father, Kinkle shot and murdered both of his parents with a semi-automatic rifle. The following day, he went to the high school and opened fire in the cafeteria, killing 2 students and injuring 25 others. Several students, including the injured Jacob Riker, heroically captured and subdued Kinkle until police arrived, and he was sentenced to 111 years in prison. Kinkle was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but his sentence remains unchanged.
Here now in Springfield, traffic is very heavy tonight. Traffic both of cars driving back and forth on the road in front of the school, trying to figure out exactly why this happened here, and traffic of students, friends, and family who are slowly building an impromptu memorial.
Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo.
So for the first time, you actually saw Homolka and heard her in that voice, that little girl voice, and she, I think, completely exposed who she was.
What is arguably the most notorious crime in modern Canadian history occurred between December 1990 and April 1992. Married couple Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo murdered 3 girls in that time span, beginning with Carla's younger sister Tammy on Christmas Eve 1990. Homolka drugged her sister with sedatives, and she then died after aspirating on her own vomit. Homolka later claimed that she was coerced by Bernardo, but evidence suggests that she was a willing participant. The two then proceeded to kidnap and murder both Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. Following their arrest, Homolka struck a very controversial plea deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against Bernardo in exchange for a reduced sentence. Homolka was sentenced to 12 years and Bernardo to life.
She was released from prison in 2005. Since then, she's kept a low profile, going by the name Leanne Teal. And for the past 2 years, she has reportedly lived in this suburb south of Montreal with her husband and their 3 children.
Aileen Wuornos.
Those men were shot just shot in self-defense, boom, boom, boom. You know, they weren't cut up, they weren't sliced up, no OJ jazz, you know. And he said, I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
Not true?
I guess not. All they were was shot and left.
One of the most famous serial killers in American history, Aileen Wuornos murdered 7 men in Florida while engaging in sex work. 6 of those 7 murders were committed between the months of May and November of 1990. Wuornos claimed that she shot the men in self-defense after they attacked her, but this argument did not hold up to scrutiny, and most believe that she killed the men in order to rob them. Wuornos was later arrested following a tip and became increasingly unstable during her time in prison, often blaming others for her crime and engaging in nonsensical rants. She was ultimately executed on October 9, 2002, at the age of 46.
It was hoped Aileen would confess all to a priest before execution, but she remained angry and defiant to the very end. Aileen sent the priest packing and then knelt down and prayed for her victims, believing they might be too evil to be accepted by God.
Kidnapping of Jaycee Lee Dugard. In the summer of 1991, the young Jaycee Lee Dugard disappeared in Myers, California on her way to the school bus stop.
She reaches the road. A gray car pulls up. A stranger rolls down the window.
And his hand shoots out, and I just feel numb.
Witnesses, including Dugard's stepfather Carl Probin, saw a man and woman force her into a gray vehicle, and the perpetrators were later identified as Philip Garrido and his wife Nancy. For 18 years, Dugard was held in a shack behind their home in Antioch, where she gave birth to 2 girls. The story was featured on America's Most Wanted within days of the abduction. Dugard and her daughters were finally found in 2009 after Philip was ordered to attend a parole meeting.
It wasn't until 2 suspicious campus police officers uncovered the truth that Jaycee was reunited with her mother after 18 torturous years.
They're like, you can see your mom, and I'm like, I can see my mom?
In 2011, he received a 431-year to life prison sentence, while Nancy was sentenced to 36 to life. The murder of Phil Hartman. Actor-comedian Phil Hartman was a cast member of Saturday Night Live from 1986 to 1994, earning an Emmy in 1989 for writing.
Fine, but please, don't tell Mrs. Clinton. Jim, let me tell you something. There's going to be a whole bunch of things we don't tell Mrs. Clinton. Fast food is the least of our worries, okay, buddy?
Hartman married his 3rd wife, Bryn Omdahl, in 1987, and the couple had 2 children together. Omdahl struggled with multiple substance use disorders for years, which put a strain on their marriage. She also reportedly had anger issues, leading to many fights between the couple, including one on the night of May 27, 1998. In the early hours of May 28th, she shot Hartman multiple times in his sleep, then confessed to 2 friends before taking her own life.
Distraught neighbors and friends of the couple say they had marital problems. One woman said she had feared that this would happen.
Hartman's murder shocked the entertainment industry at large. Family, friends, and fans continue paying tribute to the comedian. John and Lorena Bobbitt. Less than a week after their 4-year anniversary, John and Lorena Bobbitt made headlines for a shocking reason. According to Lorena, her husband assaulted her the night of June 23, 1993 in their Manassas, Virginia home. When he was asleep, she took a knife from the kitchen and removed his manhood, so to speak.
She went into the kitchen to get a glass of water. She saw the knife.
It was so many things coming into my mind. I don't know how to describe.
Lorena alleged that John was emotionally and physically abusive. She was found not guilty due to insanity and irresistible impulse. In years since, John has been arrested and charged for several alleged instances of battery involving wives and girlfriends. He and Lorena continue to talk to the media about the incident.
How quickly did you know that what happened that night was going to be a very big story?
No, I knew it was big because they were trying to, keep the reporters from coming up to the hospital.
The shooting of Mary Jo Buttafuoco. In 1991, 35-year-old auto body shop owner Joey Buttafuoco allegedly began an affair with teenager Amy Fisher. When she approached his wife Mary Jo on May 19, 1992, a heated confrontation led to Fisher shooting her in the face and fleeing the scene.
She is accused of an affair with a married man more than twice her age. She is in jail on charges of trying to kill his wife. But who is Amy Fisher?
Mary Jo survived and was able to help officials identify the young woman who shot her. Fisher, whom the press dubbed the Long Island Lolita, was arrested and charged. Meanwhile, Mary Jo suffered partial face paralysis and lost hearing in one ear. In December 1992, Fisher was sentenced to 5 to 15 years, serving 7 before being paroled in 1999.
It's not about me anymore. It's not about the person who got shot and assassinated on the front of her own home. It becomes about Joey and Amy.
And it did. It took on a life of its own, because that's what the public was seeing, and that's what they wanted.
The West Memphis Three. In May of 1993, 3 young boys from West Memphis, Arkansas were found murdered in Robin Hood Hills. Due to the shocking nature, officials speculated there was evidence of an occult ritual. 18-year-old Damian Eccles, known for his interest in Wicca, was later arrested along with his friend Jason Baldwin and acquaintance Jesse Miskelly Jr. Despite a lack of evidence, Baldwin and Miskelly got life sentences, while Eccles was sentenced to death.
They argue that the boys' predilections, along with the strange and brutal nature of the crime scene, are proof that the murders were committed as a satanic ritual.
Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky directed 3 HBO documentaries beginning with trial coverage. The case gained attention when Metallica allowed their music to be used in the first film, and high-profile celebrities like Johnny Depp publicly supported the boys' innocence. In 2011, the West Memphis Three were released after agreeing to an Alford plea.
Today, the West Memphis Three walked free.
It's been an absolute living hell.
The attack on Nancy Kerrigan. On January 6, 1994, figure skater Nancy Kerrigan was practicing for the United States Figure Skating Championships in Detroit, Michigan, when she was suddenly struck in her right leg with a baton.
Kerrigan was clubbed on the right knee with a baton by an unidentified man. Why? The whack heard round the world, as it came to be known.
Rival skater Tanya Harding and her ex-husband Jeff Gillooly were suspected of orchestrating the attack to eliminate Harding's competition. The attacker was later identified as Shane Stant, an associate of Sean Eckert, who acted as Harding's bodyguard and Gillooly's friend. Stant and his getaway driver Derek Smith accepted plea deals and were both convicted of conspiracy, while Eckert and Gillooly pled guilty to racketeering.
Just 3 weeks after the attack, her ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly, pleads guilty, but accuses Tanya of being the mastermind.
Tanya categorically denies those allegations.
I haven't done anything wrong.
Harding was banned from the USFSA and didn't skate professionally again. In 2017, interest in the infamous attack was renewed with the release of the film I, Tonya. The murder of Matthew Shepard. In October of 1998, 21-year-old University of Wyoming student Matthew Shepard was robbed and brutally attacked by 2 men, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, who left him for dead. Shepard succumbed to his severe head injuries 6 days later in the hospital.
The tragedy would become one of the most notorious anti-gay hate crimes in American history.
You need some preaching, my friend.
Matt's funeral and the murder trials, which led to multiple life sentences, dominated the media.
In December, Shepard's parents founded the Matthew Shepard Foundation. In 1999, Henderson received 2 life sentences after pleading guilty to murder and kidnapping charges and testifying against McKinney, who got the same sentences. While McKinney and Henderson maintained that they didn't target Shepard because he was gay, the case sparked discussions surrounding hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community.
You know, I just saw this very bright, intellectual, worldly young person. It's one of the mysteries that keeps you going. I can't ever really know what he might have been able to accomplish, but I have a pretty good idea of what we can accomplish in his name if we keep doing it. And so we do.
In October 2009, then-President Barack Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act into law. The assassination of Gianni Versace. After Gianni Versace opened his first boutique in 1978, the Italian fashion designer quickly made a name for himself in the industry.
I have a beautiful house, I have a beautiful life, but that is the media. What I desire is more.
His life was cut short at 50 years old when Andrew Cunanan shot him in front of his Miami Beach home on July 15, 1997. 8 days later, Cunanan took his own life. The cross-country spree killer had previously killed 4 other men before Versace, including his friend Jeffrey Trail in Minneapolis and well-known real estate developer Lee Miglin in Chicago.
Andrew Cunanan makes the top 10 FBI list. You had people in all parts of the country wondering whether Andrew Cunanan was going to show up at their house.
Authorities admit that by now, Cunanan could be anywhere.
While his exact motivations are ultimately unknown, experts speculate Cunanan was jealous of Versace's fame and fortune. In 2018, the second season of American Crime Story revisited the crime and the aftermath. The death of James Bulger. One of the most shocking criminal cases in British history took place on February 12, 1993, when 2 of the country's youngest offenders took the life of the even younger James Bulger.
After all this time, 17 years, there's no doubt in your mind that it wasn't just a prank gone wrong, it was evil.
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind at all. It was complete evil intent.
The now widely viewed CCTV footage shows Robert Thompson and John Venables leading Bulger out of the New Strand shopping center. Days after the boys' unspeakable acts, Bulger's body was found in Walton, Liverpool. Professionals determined Thompson and Venables knew right from wrong despite their young ages. In November that year, they were found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. In 2001, both were released from youth detention centers at the age of 18 and given new identities.
They got no punishment whatsoever. They got rewarded for murdering James. That's why I've never let it go and I won't let it go.
You think they were rewarded?
Of course it was a reward because they never spent no time in a prison.
Venables returned to prison on several occasions for possession of explicit material involving minors. The Rodney King beating. While driving home with friends on the morning of March 3, 1991, Rodney King was allegedly speeding on the highway and refused to stop for police, and a high-speed chase ensued. They were eventually pulled over by 5 officers from the Los Angeles Police Department. George Holliday, a nearby witness, filmed the officers tasing King, repeatedly striking him with batons and kicking him.
Rodney King struggled in many ways for the rest of his life.
He would have nightmares. I mean, you could hear him yelling in his sleep, kind of moaning, like he was literally having a nightmare.
According to officers, he resisted arrest, though King and witnesses denied this. The footage was sent to a local news station and ignited widespread criticism of the LAPD and law enforcement's excessive force. After the 4 officers avoided conviction in 1992, public outrage in the African American community led to the 6-day Los Angeles riots.
Well, my reaction is shock first and then disappointment. Obviously, we feel the evidence warranted a conviction on the defendants, and the jury disagreed with us, and we must abide by their decision.
The death of JonBenét Ramsey. On December 26, 1996, the young JonBenét Ramsey went missing from her home in Boulder, Colorado. Her parents, John and Patsy, allegedly found a ransom note demanding a suspiciously specific amount of money.
The note demands $118,000 and threatens the immediate execution of their daughter.
Just hours after she was reported missing, John found his daughter's lifeless body in the basement. Her death was ruled a homicide.
And lo and behold, when John Ramsey finds the body,
you now have John Ramsey at the crime scene.
Documentaries and TV programs still revisit the case, analyzing the evidence, going over statements, and uncovering secrets surrounding the family members. The persisting mystery of her death will seemingly always captivate the nation. Despite many ongoing theories and suspects, the case remains unsolved to this day.
I believe there is some evidence to suggest strongly that he may have come in through a basement window.
The Centennial Olympic Park tragedy. In 1996, Atlanta, Georgia hosted the Summer Olympics. Security guard Richard Jewell discovered what appeared to be a pipe bomb under a bench in the park. He immediately called the police and helped lead people to safety before the blast. The bombing resulted in 1 death and 100 injuries.
He was hailed a hero.
And I just hope that we catch the people that did it.
Jewell was labeled a hero, but then quickly became the FBI's main suspect. For almost 3 months, the FBI investigation and the media attention ruined his life.
Some of the coverage, while acknowledging that Jewell was only under investigation, still cast him in the worst possible light.
His name was eventually cleared, but the real bomber, Eric Rudolph, wasn't caught until 2013. Jewell was the subject of a Clint Eastwood film, as well as season 2 of Discovery Channel's anthology series Manhunt.
Until the day I die, there will be people who believe that I'm a murderer.
The murders of Tupac and Biggie Smalls. In the late 90s, 2 of hip-hop's most influential artists were killed within 6 months of each other.
Backseat of the Cadillac, unrolled the window, arm came out, opened fire, and just went rat-a-tat-tat. There were 13 shots fired.
On September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur was gunned down, dying 6 days later. Then, on March 9th, 1997, Biggie Smalls, also known as the Notorious B.I.G., a suspect in Tupac's murder, was shot and killed.
911 emergency, what are you reporting? We're on Fairfax and Wilshire. What's wrong? We're man shot in our car right now.
The two started off as friends, but quickly became enemies in the East Coast-West Coast War. Suspects range from former Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight to corrupt officers in the LAPD. New theories still arise today from lifelong fans hoping to solve the murders of 2 young rappers at the height of their careers.
You don't know who's with who, how it's going to go down.
The World Trade Center bombing. 8 years before the September 11th attacks, the World Trade Center was hit with a bomb. On the afternoon of February 26, 1993, a bomb went off inside a rental van, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. The van was located in the underground parking garage.
At 12:18 p.m., World Trade Center Tower number 1 became a tower of smoke.
Shockingly, one of the men who planted the bomb actually went to the rental agency to get his security deposit back. Not so shockingly, he was brought in by the FBI. Mohammed Salama and his 3 accomplices were arrested and later convicted.
Yesterday, federal agents raided Salama's apartment, where they found the evidence that led to his arrest.
The granite memorial fountain built to honor the victims was destroyed in 2001, but the names of the victims are included in the North Pool of the 9/11 memorial.
93 bombing was the powder keg. It was the start of America being vulnerable.
The murder of Selena Quintanilla Perez. Selena Quintanilla Perez was just 23 years old when she was killed by her fan club president and friend Yolanda Saldívar on March 31st, 1995.
Selena has been shot dead at a Corpus Christi motel.
Yolanda was caught embezzling the singer's money, and Selena confronted her at a motel to collect tax papers. Rather than face the consequences of her crimes, Yolanda fatally shot her supposedly best friend.
It's not like we thought that this person was possible of the act that she committed.
Given Selena's bright and bubbly presence that touched so many, her sudden death is still a shocking reality. It's impossible to listen to Dreaming of You and not cry thinking of the heartbreaking ending of the 1997 film. Love for the iconic singer was revitalized with Netflix's Selena the series. The crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. He's sometimes called the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, but everyone knows the name Dahmer. From 1978 to 1991, he killed 17 young men, doing unspeakable things to their remains.
Jeffrey Dahmer was responsible for killing more than a dozen people.
The killer was finally caught on July 22, 1991, after an intended victim escaped and flagged down police. A lot of media attention has focused on his upbringing, attempting to explain why anyone would commit such horrific crimes.
Milwaukee newspaper is reporting the man has confessed to killing at least 11 people.
What makes him enduringly fascinating is just how normal he looked. Ryan Murphy's Netflix original series starring Evan Peters is based on Dahmer's life, but told through the eyes of his victims. The Waco Siege. Beginning February 28, 1993, the FBI led a siege against David Koresh, leader of the Branch Davidians, and his cult followers. Suspecting that the group was stockpiling illegal weapons, ATF agents had arrived at Mount Carmel Center outside Waco, Texas, to serve a warrant. Instead, a deadly gunfight ensued, resulting in the deaths of 4 agents and 6 Branch Davidians.
Even when the agents all left, we felt that they would be back that night and kill us.
The siege continued for 51 days, finally ending April 19th, when the FBI flooded the building with tear gas, attempting to force everyone out.
This is not an assault. We are not entering the building.
A fire consumed the building, and by the end, 76 Branch Davidians were dead. Official reports alleged that cult members lit the fires, while surviving cult members blamed the FBI.
Huge numbers of Americans watched this play out on their television sets, and the ending was incredibly horrifying.
The Oklahoma City attack. 2 years to the day after the Waco siege, a bomb went off under the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City.
A massive car bomb exploded outside of a large federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, shattering that building.
The bombing killed at least 168 people, including 19 children, wounding over 680 others. The 9-story building contained offices of 14 federal agencies. Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, 2 soldiers turned anti-government extremists, targeted this location because it housed the DEA and ATF, 2 of the 3 agencies they sought to attack. McVeigh was sentenced to death for this act of domestic terrorism, one of the worst in U.S. history.
It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil.
The Columbine High School massacre. When you say Columbine, everyone knows what you're referring to. Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado became front-page news on April 20th, 1999, after 2 heavily armed students killed 13 and wounded over 20 others before taking their own lives.
Just Sheriff's Office, do you have an emergency? Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
This wasn't the first school shooting in the U.S. There had been a string of others around the country, but at the time, it was the deadliest in U.S. history. This infamous attack forever changed how security and safety protocols are handled in schools. Victims of the shooting suffer lasting trauma, some continuing to speak about their experience in the hopes of preventing more tragedies.
It's good that school shootings are still shocking because it shows that they're really rare.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. On June 13, 1994, the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were found in front of her Brentwood home, having been stabbed to death the night before.
She was absolutely terrified for her life.
Nicole's ex-husband, former football star O.J. Simpson, became the #1 suspect. The trial, dubbed the Trial of the Century, began 7 months after the murders on January 24, 1995, and would last 134 days, with the shocking verdict being announced on October 3rd.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187.
In the media, it's often forgotten that it isn't all about Simpson. The families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman lost their loved ones. The infamous Bronco chase, trying on the gloves, the theatrics in and out of court, all distract from the reality of the case. 2 people were brutally killed.
A mostly white jury found Simpson liable, ordering him to pay $33.5 million to the families of the murder victims in 1997.
Do you remember reading about these? Let us know in the comments below.